Great. So thank you for having us, first of all. And I think I'm just going to explain a little bit about what Diásporas Críticas does. So I'm going to start by explaining a little bit about what Diásporas Críticas does and try and demonstrate how the proposition for the word decolonize comes from this research work. So there's 3 of us in the platform, and we've been working together for around 2 years, extending and also inventing an archive of manifestos, speeches, and poetry that come from a feminist or queer or decolonial lineage. So it's a collection and an expanding collection of languages of resistance or micro-political struggles, and their traces are these texts. So actually the thing about images is that we generally, we don't work with images. This archive is a precarious folder of text. So a lot of the work has been related to activating this archive, and that has involved the experimentation with different forms of writing. So we work with this idea of a script essay, which is a form of critical writing made from fragments of these texts. Engaging with this archive in this way has allowed us to make certain critical cartographies of the present moment, which obviously is a neoliberal present moment. And the way that we understand neoliberalism is as a colonial and historical system of writing that inscribes itself on the body through techniques of racialization and sexualization. This is something that we're calling from the platform the colonial wound. And the relationship between the archive, or perhaps because of the persistence of this historical system of writing on the body, there has been a consistent response to this. So a persistent micro-political response coming mostly from radical and black feminisms, from queer practices, from answers to the technologies of silence that the AIDS crisis brought in the 80s, which we're currently experiencing now as a kind of second moment of intensification of these techniques of racialization and sexualization. So I guess the idea to propose the word decolonize today in relation to subjectivity also is something that came out of the recent conference organized by Beatriz Preciado at MACBA, which was called Decolonize the Museum. And this term, the idea to link decolonize with subjectivization, I think, is a response to an awareness that out of that discussion about decolonizing and the museum and collections, there was a need to intervene in a certain paralyzing feeling that we could call shame or guilt that tends to cut the conversation. So I think I'm just going to continue. I'll read the first section of our text and then finish. So this is a text that actually Anyely wrote and then I translated. So decolonize. Operate on the nodes of hegemonic aesthesis. Decoloniality, program of hybrid and discontinuous tactics that traverse materiality and writing, memory and archive, history and affect. Decolonization, process of subjectification. Note, the subject of the decolonial revolution does not exist. It is produced in the process of decolonization. Program. 1. Produce a new body, un cuerpo nuevo. Intervening precisely where the techniques of racialization and sexualization divide up affects and design hierarchies in the world. 2. Activate and invent an archive that serves the memory of this body. Intervene in the technologies that silence resistances, reappropriate the languages and voices of distinct micro-political struggles, understand their contributions to the decolonial program. 3. Counteract the symptoms of the colonial wound with writing as direct action. rewrite, inscribe to restore the erasure, traverse the invisible, inaudible, and unsayable fields of coloniality, invent the archive. 4. Open multiple spaces for the invention of decolonial processes of subjectification. Write, resist, create alliances, and modify affects. Thank you.
And others, which you probably know, the decolonization group of people from Latin America, how much you refer to their ideas, Swahili's, and also the artistic references, if there are.
I think Swahili, the way that Swahili started the presentation today, so the way that Swahili started her presentation today is really important, I think, and relates very much to what we're trying to talk about with our contribution. So the idea that subject is not the same as subjectivization seems to be a good place to start, because it might possibly be in conflict with an idea of self-determination, but that might be an interesting thing to talk about. In terms of other kinds of, sorry, what was the other question? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the things at Diasporas Críticas, one of the first projects was a reading group around the work of Walter Mignolo, which was a great opportunity to revise some really useful notions, such as the colonial wound, a notion of aesthesis, which tends to stay in the realm of contemporary art practices. So what we're trying to do with this text is bring it back to the body. And in general, Walter Mignolo uses a lot of concepts that have come originally from black feminisms and border thinking, Gloria Antaldúa, which is where we come from. That's the main source of our archive and our thinking. So it was about connecting up or using some useful concepts to talk about neoliberalism as a colonial strategy and connecting it back with other memories of resistance.